She appeared at his door at midnight with no memory of her past, but she knew secrets about his soul that no stranger should ever know. The old wooden clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Jack heard the first sound. It was soft, almost like a whisper, but it made him look up from his laptop screen. He had been staring at the same blank page for 3 hours now, waiting for words that never came. Jack lived alone in a small cabin deep in the forest. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and the main road was even further. He chose this place on purpose after his life fell apart 6 months ago. No phone calls, no visitors, no distractions. Just him, his thoughts, and the stories he couldn't seem to write anymore. The rain had been falling hard all evening, drumming against the windows like tiny fingers asking to come inside. The wind made the old cabin creak and groan, sounds Jack had gotten used to over the past few months. But this sound was different. It came again, clearer this time. Knock. 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 Jack froze. Who could be at his door at this hour? And how did they even find this place? The dirt road leading to his cabin was barely visible during the day, and at night with this storm it would be nearly impossible to navigate. He closed his laptop and walked slowly to the front door. The knocking came again, patient and steady. Jack looked through the small window beside the door, but all he could see was darkness and rain. "Hello?" he called out, his voice sounding strange after hours of silence. "Please," came a soft voice from the other side. It was a woman's voice, weak and tired. "I need help." Jack's hand hesitated on the door handle. He had moved to this isolated place to avoid people, to be alone with his problems. But something in that voice made his heart race. She sounded genuinely desperate. Against every rational thought in his head, Jack unlocked the door and opened it slowly. Standing on his porch was a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. Her dark hair was soaked from the rain, hanging in wet strands around her face. She wore what looked like a hospital gown, thin white fabric that was completely unsuitable for the cold October night. Her feet were bare, muddy, and she was shivering uncontrollably. But what struck Jack most were her eyes. They were bright, green, and held a strange mixture of confusion and relief, as if she had been searching for something and finally found it. "Thank goodness," she whispered. And then her legs gave out. Jack caught her before she could fall, surprised by how cold her skin felt. She was lighter than he expected, and when he lifted her, she felt almost fragile in his arms. "What happened? To you?" Jack asked as he carried her inside, kicking the door closed behind him. "Are you hurt?" The woman shook her head weakly. "I don't know," she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper. "I can't remember." Jack set her down gently on his old couch and quickly grabbed a thick blanket from his bedroom. When he returned, she was looking around the cabin with wide eyes as if she had never seen a place like this before. "Where am I?" she asked as Jack wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "You're about 20 miles north of Pine Ridge," Jack said, sitting down in the chair across from her. "This is my cabin. I'm Jack, by the way. What's your name?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fire crackling in the fireplace. "I think it's Luna," she said finally. But she didn't sound sure. "Everything is so foggy. I remember walking through the forest, but I don't know why or how I got there." Jack studied her face. She didn't look like someone who was lying or trying to trick him. The confusion in her eyes seemed genuine, and there was something vulnerable about the way she held herself. "Do you remember anything else, where you came from? How you ended up in a hospital gown?" Luna pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "Bits and pieces. I remember bright lights, people in white coats. Someone was asking me questions, but I can't remember what they were or what I answered." She looked up at Jack then, and he felt a strange sensation as if she could see right through him. "You're sad," she said suddenly. "There's a deep sadness in you, like you've lost something important." Jack blinked, taken aback. "I'm sorry?" "I don't know why I said that," Luna said quickly, looking embarrassed. "Sometimes things just come to me about people. I can't help it." The strange thing was, she was right. Jack had been carrying a heavy sadness for months now. His marriage had ended badly. His writing career had stalled, and he felt like he had lost himself somewhere along the way. But how could this stranger possibly know that? "Listen," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You need dry clothes and something warm to eat. Then we should probably call someone. The police or a hospital, maybe." Luna's eyes widened with what looked like fear. "No, please, not yet. I just need some time to remember. Please don't call anyone tonight." There was something in her voice that made Jack pause. It wasn't just fear he heard, but genuine terror. Whatever had happened to her, wherever she had come from, she was truly frightened of going back. "Okay," Jack said softly. "No phone calls tonight. But you can't stay in that wet gown. I'll find you something to wear." He went to his bedroom and pulled out a clean t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. They would be too big for her, but they would be warm and dry. When he returned to the living room, Luna was staring at the flames in the fireplace, her expression distant. "The bathroom is just down the hall," Jack said, handing her the clothes. "Take your time." While Luna changed, Jack made hot tea and heated up some leftover soup. His mind was racing with questions. How had she found his cabin in the middle of nowhere? Why was she dressed like a patient? And how had she known about his sadness with just one look? When Luna came back, she looked much better. The clothes were indeed too big, but she had rolled up the sleeves and pants, and there was some color back in her cheeks. She sat down at his small kitchen table and accepted the mug of tea gratefully. "This is very kind of you," she said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Most people would have called the police by now." "I'm not most people," Jack replied, sitting across from her with his own mug. "I came out here to get away from the world. I guess I understand the need to disappear, sometimes." Luna studied his face over the rim of her mug. "You're a writer," she said. It wasn't a question. Jack nodded, surprised again. "How did you know that?" "The way you look at things, like you're always thinking about how to describe them. And your hands." She gestured to his fingers. "There's a small callus on your right index finger from holding a pen." Jack looked down at his hands. She was right about the callus, something he had never really noticed himself. "What else do you see?" he asked, genuinely curious now. Luna was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Sometimes I notice things about people that they don't want noticed." "Try me," Jack said. She looked at him carefully, as if she was reading a book written on his face. "You used to be married. Recently divorced maybe 6 months ago. It wasn't your choice. You loved her very much, but she said you had grown apart. You blame yourself? Think if you had been more present, more successful, things might have been different." Jack felt his breath catch. Every word was true, painfully accurate. "How could you possibly know all that?" "I wish I knew," Luna said, looking troubled. "It's like I can see the emotional weight people carry. The sadness, the joy, the fear. It just comes to me naturally." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. The storm continued outside, but inside the cabin felt warm and safe. Jack found himself studying Luna's face in the firelight. There was something almost otherworldly about her, as if she didn't quite belong in this ordinary world. "You can stay here tonight," Jack said finally. "Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next." Luna's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I promise I'm not dangerous or crazy. I just need time to remember who I am and what happened to me." Jack showed her to the small spare bedroom, gave her extra blankets, and wished her good night. But as he lay in his own bed later, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that Luna's arrival was going to change everything. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the cabin, two lost souls had found each other in the darkness. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about reality, memory, and the power of human connection. In the morning, Jack would wake to find Luna standing at the kitchen window, watching the sunrise with tears in her eyes. And when she turned to him, She would say words that would send them both on a journey into the unknown. But for now, they slept peacefully, unaware that somewhere in the distance people in dark suits were already searching for the woman who had disappeared from their facility, the woman they called by a different name entirely. Jack woke up to the smell of coffee and something he hadn't experienced in months, the sound of someone else moving around his kitchen. For a moment he forgot about the events of the night before. Then reality came rushing back. Luna was standing by the window, holding a steaming mug in both hands, watching the morning sunlight filter through the trees. She had found one of his old flannel shirts and put it on over the t-shirt, making her look smaller and more vulnerable than she had the night before. "Good morning," Jack said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned and smiled, but he could see the worry lines around her eyes. "I hope you don't mind. I made coffee. I couldn't sleep much." "Bad dreams?" Jack asked, pouring himself a cup. Luna nodded slowly. "Not exactly dreams, more like pieces of memories trying to fit together, but they don't make sense." Jack sat down at the small table and gestured for her to join him. "Want to talk about it? Sometimes saying things out loud helps." Luna sat across from him, wrapping her hands around her mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I remember being in a white room, very clean, very bright. There were people in lab coats asking me questions, but I can't remember what they asked or what I answered." She paused, staring into her coffee. "There was a man with kind eyes behind thick glasses. He seemed worried about me, like he was trying to protect me from something, but there was also a woman with cold eyes who made me feel afraid." Jack listened carefully, noticing how Luna's voice changed when she talked about these memories. It became smaller, more uncertain. "Do you remember your last name? Or where you lived before?" Luna shook her head. "It's like trying to grab smoke. The harder I try to remember, the more it slips away." She looked up at Jack suddenly. "But I remember things about you." "What do you mean?" "I had dreams about you last night, but they weren't really dreams, were they? They felt more like memories, but that's impossible because we just met." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of memories?" Luna hesitated, as if she was afraid to say the words out loud. "I saw you as a little boy, maybe 7 years old, sitting in a closet reading a book with a flashlight. Your parents were fighting downstairs and you were trying to block out the noise by escaping into stories." Jack's mug slipped from his hands, hitting the table with a sharp clink. Coffee splashed everywhere, but he barely noticed. "How could you possibly know that?" "I don't know," Luna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I also saw you in college, working late at night in the library, writing your first short story. You were so excited about it that you couldn't sleep for 3 days. Every detail was perfect, down to the title of the story and the worn wooden table where he had written it." Jack stared at Luna, his mind racing. "This is impossible. No one knows about those things. I never told anyone about hiding in the closet." Luna reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I can't control what I see or know about people. It just happens." Jack pulled his hand away, not because he was angry, but because her touch felt too familiar, too comfortable. "What else do you see?" "I see your wedding day. You were nervous but happy. Your wife looked beautiful in her white dress, but even then, there was a distance in her eyes that you chose not to notice." Jack stood up abruptly and walked to the window. These weren't things Luna could guess or figure out from looking at him. These were private moments buried deep in his memory. "I see the night she told you she wanted a divorce," Luna continued softly. "You were in your study, working on a manuscript that you never finished. She said you had grown apart, that you lived in your head too much and forgot about the real world." "Stop," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just stop." But Luna continued, her voice gentle but persistent. "I see you the day you decided to come to this cabin. You threw all your unfinished stories in a box and drove here without telling anyone where you were going. You thought maybe if you could just be alone, you could figure out who you were supposed to be." Jack turned to face her, tears in his eyes. Who are you? What are you? I wish I knew, Luna said. And for the first time since she had arrived, she looked truly frightened. These abilities, seeing into people's hearts and memories, I don't think I've always had them. I think something was done to me. Over the next few days, Luna's memories began returning in larger pieces. She remembered working in a research facility, but the details were fuzzy. She thought she had been a psychologist, someone who studied the human mind. But she couldn't remember her patients or her colleagues clearly. I think I volunteered for something, she told Jack on the third day. They were sitting by the fireplace, Luna curled up in a blanket while Jack worked on his laptop. An experiment of some kind, but I can't remember why. Jack had been doing research of his own, searching online for missing persons reports, unusual, disappearances, anything that might explain Luna's presence, but he had found nothing. It was as if she had simply appeared out of thin air. Maybe you should see a doctor, Jack suggested. Memory loss can be serious. Luna shook her head quickly. No doctors. Not yet. I'm starting to remember more each day. I think I need to do this naturally. That evening, Luna's memories took on a darker tone. She woke up from a nap screaming, and when Jack rushed to her side, she was shaking uncontrollably. They were doing something to my mind, she gasped, clutching Jack's arm, changing things, adding things, taking things away. There were machines, electrodes, drugs that made everything fuzzy. Jack held her until she stopped shaking. It was just a nightmare. No, Luna said firmly. It was a memory. I remember. Now why I can see into people's minds. They enhanced something that was already there, made it stronger. They were trying to create people who could read others perfectly, understand their deepest thoughts and fears. Why would anyone want to do that? Luna looked at him with eyes full of knowledge that seemed too heavy for her to carry. Think about it, Jack. If you could read anyone's mind, know their secrets, their weaknesses, their desires, what couldn't you accomplish? You could be the perfect spy, the perfect negotiator, the perfect manipulator. The thought sent chills through Jack. So you escaped? I think so, but I don't remember how or why. Something went wrong with the process, I think. My memories are all mixed up and I can't control what I see in people. She paused, looking at Jack intently. Except with you, it's different. How? With other people, I see their emotions and memories like watching a movie. But with you, it feels like I'm living them. Like your experiences are somehow part of me too. Jack didn't know what to say to that. Over the past few days, he had felt an unusual connection to Luna as well. It was as if they had known each other for years instead of days. There's something else, Luna said quietly. I don't think my arrival here was random. In my memories of the facility, there are files, documents with information about you, your address, your background, your psychological profile. Jack felt his blood turn cold. What are you saying? I think they sent me here, Jack. I think you were chosen for some reason, and I was programmed to find you. Luna's voice was full of anguish. I don't even know if my feelings for you are real or if they were planted in my mind. The cabin suddenly felt small and cramped. Jack walked to the window and looked out at the dark forest. Somewhere out there, people might be watching, waiting, planning. His quiet retreat from the world had been shattered, replaced by questions that had no easy answers. What do we do now? Jack asked. Luna joined him at the window. We find the truth. About me, about why they chose you, about what they really want. She took his hand, and despite everything, it still felt right. But Jack, you need to know that being around me might be dangerous. If they're still looking for me, you could get hurt. Jack looked at her reflection in the window glass. Let them come. I've been hiding from life for months. Maybe it's time to fight for something that matters. Neither of them noticed the small red light blinking in the darkness outside, or the figure watching them through high-powered binoculars from the tree line. The hunters had found their prey and the real game was about to begin. The next morning brought an unsettling discovery. Jack found small, almost invisible holes drilled in the trees around his cabin. They were perfectly round and looked recent. When he pointed them out to Luna, her face went pale. "Surveillance. Equipment," she whispered, running her finger along one of the holes. "They've been watching you, probably for weeks." Jack felt his stomach drop. "How long do you think they've been there?" Luna closed her eyes, as if trying to pull the information from somewhere deep in her mind. "I'm getting flashes of memory. They've been planning this for months. They needed someone isolated, someone with specific psychological traits." She opened her eyes and looked at him sadly. Someone who would be likely to help a stranger in need. They spent the morning carefully checking the cabin and surrounding area. They found tiny cameras hidden in the trees, microphones disguised as natural objects, and motion sensors placed along all the paths leading to Jack's home. The realization hit them both at the same time. This wasn't a coincidence. Luna's arrival had been orchestrated. "I need to remember more," Luna said, sitting heavily on the front porch steps. "There has to be a way to access my blocked memories." Jack sat beside her. "Maybe if we go back to where it all started? You said you remember bits and pieces about a research facility." Luna nodded slowly. "There was a sign. I can almost see it in my mind. Something about advanced research, but the name is fuzzy." She pressed her hands against her temples. "It was maybe an hour's drive from here, in a valley surrounded by mountains." Jack knew the area she was describing. There were several private research facilities in that region, most of them secretive and well-funded. "We could drive around, see if anything looks familiar to you." "It's dangerous," Luna warned. "If they're still monitoring this place, they'll follow us. Then we'll have to be careful." They left the cabin at noon, taking Jack's old pickup truck down winding mountain roads. Luna sat quietly, watching the landscape pass by, occasionally asking Jack to slow down when something caught her attention. After an hour of driving, they came to a valley dotted with several modern buildings hidden among the trees. Luna suddenly grabbed Jack's arm. "There," she said, pointing to a complex of white buildings surrounded by high fences. "That's it, the Meridian Research Institute." Jack pulled over at a safe distance, and they studied the facility through binoculars. It looked more like a military base than a research center, with guards at the gates and cameras everywhere. "I worked there," Luna said, her voice growing stronger as memories began flooding back. "But not as a regular employee. I was investigating them." "Investigating them for what?" Luna was quiet for several minutes, her eyes closed in concentration. When she opened them, they were filled with a new clarity. "My real name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I'm a forensic psychologist who works with the government to investigate unethical research practices." Jack stared at her. "You're a federal investigator?" "Was," Luna corrected. "I went undercover at Meridian 6 months ago. They were rumored to be conducting illegal experiments on human subjects, trying to create people with enhanced psychological abilities for intelligence purposes. The pieces were starting to fit together." "So you volunteered to be a test subject?" "It was the only way to get evidence. But something went wrong. The memory modification process they used was more extensive than I expected. They didn't just enhance my abilities, they tried to erase my real identity completely." Luna grabbed Jack's hand. "That's why I could access your memories so easily. The process made me hypersensitive to the thoughts and experiences of others, especially people I spend time with. But why me? Why was I chosen?" Luna's expression darkened. "Because you're the perfect test case. You're isolated, emotionally vulnerable, and you have a naturally empathetic personality. They wanted to see if I could form a genuine emotional connection with someone despite my modified mental state." Jack felt sick. "So everything between us is just an experiment?" "No," Luna said firmly. "That's what they expected to happen, but something went wrong with their plan. The feelings I have for you are real, Jack. The memory modification didn't erase my capacity for genuine emotion, it enhanced it." As they sat watching the facility, a black sedan pulled up to the main gate. Even from a distance, they could see two men in dark suits getting out and speaking with the guards. "We need to go," Luna said urgently. "Now." They drove quickly away from the valley, taking back roads to avoid detection. But Luna's memories were now flowing freely, bringing both clarity and fear. "I remember more now," she said as they drove. "Dr. Harrison was the man with kind eyes I told you about. He was my contact on the inside, helping me document their illegal activities. But Dr. Mitchell, the woman with cold eyes, she discovered what we were doing. What happened? They captured me before I could get the evidence out. Instead of just wiping my memory and releasing me, Dr. Mitchell decided to use me as a test subject for their most extreme experiment." Luna shuddered. They tried to create a perfect psychological weapon, someone who could read minds, manipulate emotions, and infiltrate any social group without detection. But the process damaged my original personality matrix. "How did you escape?" "I didn't escape," Luna said quietly. "I think Dr. Harrison helped me get out, but my memories of that night are still blocked. All I know is that I woke up in the forest near your cabin with no clear recollection of how I got there." When they returned to the cabin that evening, they found subtle signs that someone had been inside. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but Jack could tell that his papers had been searched and his computer had been accessed. "They're getting bolder," Luna observed. "They know we're starting to remember and piece things together." That night, strange things began happening around the cabin. The lights flickered for no reason. Jack's cell phone received calls from numbers that didn't exist, and both of them experienced vivid dreams that felt more like shared memories than normal sleep. "It's getting stronger," Luna said over breakfast the next morning. "The connection between us, I mean. I think the proximity and emotional bond we've formed is amplifying the effects of what they did to me." Jack had noticed it too. He found himself knowing things about Luna that she hadn't told him, and sometimes he felt like he was experiencing her emotions as if they were his own. "Is it dangerous?" Jack asked. "I don't know. This level of psychological connection wasn't part of their original experiment. We're in uncharted territory." As if to prove her point, Jack suddenly had a vivid flash of memory that wasn't his own. He saw Dr. Harrison sitting in a small office, frantically copying files to a USB drive while looking over his shoulder nervously. "The evidence," Jack said, aloud. "Dr. Harrison saved the evidence before you escaped." Luna stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I just saw it, like a memory, but it was your memory, not mine." Luna grabbed his hands. "If that's true, if Dr. Harrison managed to save the files, then we might still be able to expose what Meridian is doing. How do we find him?" "I don't know if he's still alive," Luna said grimly. "But I remember where he lived. There's a small town about 50 miles north of here. If he made it out, he might still be hiding there." Jack looked out the window at the forest that had been his refuge for so many months. It no longer felt safe or peaceful. Instead, it felt like a trap that was slowly closing around them. "Luna," he said quietly, "what if we can't stop them? What if they're too powerful?" She squeezed his hands tighter. "Then we make sure the truth gets out no matter what happens to us. Some things are worth fighting for, even if the odds are against us." That evening, as they prepared for what might be their last night of safety in the cabin, Jack realized that Luna had changed his life in ways he never could have imagined. She had brought danger and uncertainty, but she had also brought purpose and connection. "Tomorrow we find Dr. Harrison," Jack said as they sat by the fireplace. "Tomorrow we find the truth," Luna agreed. Neither of them saw the red dots of laser sights moving slowly across the cabin windows, or heard the soft footsteps surrounding their temporary sanctuary. The hunters were moving in for the final phase of their plan, and time was running out faster than either Jack or Luna realized. Jack woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of Luna screaming. He rushed to her room to find her sitting up in bed, her eyes wide with terror, and her whole body shaking. "They're coming," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "I can feel them getting closer." Jack looked out the window, but saw only darkness. It might have been a nightmare. "No," Luna said, her voice more certain now. My abilities are getting stronger. I can sense people's intentions from a distance now. There are at least 6 of them, maybe more, moving through the forest toward us. Jack's blood ran cold. How much time do we have? Luna closed her eyes and concentrated. Maybe 20 minutes. They're being careful, trying not to make noise. They quickly gathered their few belongings and slipped out the back door of the cabin. Jack led Luna through a narrow path he had discovered during his months of solitude, one that wound through dense trees and would be nearly impossible to follow in the dark. As they moved through the forest, Luna suddenly stopped. Jack, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been afraid to say. What is it? The connection between us, the way I can access your memories and you can sometimes access mine. I don't think it's just a side effect of what they did to me. Jack turned to face her in the moonlight. What do you mean? I think they planned it. I think they chose you not just because you were isolated and empathetic, but because you have some kind of natural psychic sensitivity that you've never recognized. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. That's impossible. Think about it, Luna urged. You're a writer. You've always been able to understand people deeply, to create characters that feel completely real. You've always had unusually vivid dreams, and you've always been able to sense when something bad was about to happen. Jack wanted to deny it, but as Luna spoke, memories began flooding back. Times when he had known his phone was going to ring before it did. Moments when he had written scenes that later seemed to predict real events. The way he had always been able to understand people's motivations better than they understood them themselves. They enhanced something that was already in you, Luna continued. That's why our connection is so strong. We're both psychically sensitive, and what they did to me amplified our natural ability to connect with each other. Before Jack could respond, they heard voices in the distance. Their pursuers had reached the cabin and discovered they were gone. This way, Jack whispered, leading Luna deeper into the forest. They walked for hours, following deer paths and creek beds, staying away from any roads or clearings. As dawn broke, they found themselves on a hillside overlooking a small town nestled in a valley below. That's where Dr. Harrison lived, Luna said, pointing to a cluster of houses near the town center. If he's still alive, he might be hiding there. They made their way down into the town, trying to look like ordinary hikers who had spent the night camping. The streets were quiet in the early morning, with only a few people heading to work or walking their dogs. Dr. Harrison's house was a small, neat cottage with a garden full of flowers. As they approached, Luna suddenly grabbed Jack's arm. He's here, she said, but he's scared, very scared. They knocked softly on the front door. After a long pause, they heard footsteps, and then a man's voice called out, "Who's there?" "Dr. Harrison," Luna called back. "It's Elena Rodriguez. We need your help." The door opened slowly, revealing a man in his 60s with kind eyes behind thick glasses, exactly as Luna had described from her recovered memories. His face showed both relief and terror when he saw them. "Elena," he whispered. "Thank God you're alive, but you shouldn't be here. It's not safe. He ushered them inside quickly and locked the door behind them. The house was cluttered with boxes and suitcases, as if he had been preparing to leave at any moment. "I've been waiting for you to contact me," Dr. Harrison said. "But I was afraid. They had completely erased your memory." "Most of it came back," Luna explained. "But there are still gaps. Did you save the evidence?" Dr. Harrison nodded and led them to a hidden room behind his bookshelf. Inside were computers, filing cabinets, and dozens of boxes filled with documents. "Everything is here," he said. "Patient files, experimental protocols, financial records showing government funding for illegal research. Enough evidence to shut down Meridian and prosecute everyone involved." Jack looked around the room in amazement. "Why haven't you released this information already?" Dr. Harrison's expression grew sad. "Because they have my daughter. They took her 3 days after you escaped, Elena. They're holding her somewhere, and they've made it clear that if I release any information, she'll disappear forever." Luna sank into a chair, the weight of the situation hitting her. I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. No, Dr. Harrison said firmly. This is their fault. You were trying to expose their crimes. My daughter is a victim, just like all the people they experimented on. Jack studied the older man's face. There has to be a way to save your daughter and still get this information out. That's what I've been trying to figure out for months, Dr. Harrison admitted. But they're too powerful. They have connections in the government, unlimited funding, and resources I can't match. Luna stood up suddenly, her eyes bright with a new idea. What if we don't fight them directly? What if we use their own methods against them? What do you mean? Jack asked. My enhanced abilities. What if we use them to find Dr. Harrison's daughter? I can read people, sense their emotions and memories. If we can get close enough to anyone involved with Meridian, I might be able to find out where she's being held. Dr. Harrison looked hopeful for the first time since they had arrived. Do you think you could really do that? I don't know, Luna admitted. My abilities are still growing and changing, but it might be our only chance. They spent the rest of the day going through Dr. Harrison's files, learning more about the scope of Meridian's illegal activities. The research facility had been experimenting on dozens of people, trying to create various types of enhanced humans. Luna's case was just one of many. Look at this, Jack said, pointing to a document he had found. They've been monitoring me for over a year, long before Luna escaped. They have psychological profiles, financial records, even medical information. Luna read over his shoulder. They didn't just choose you as a test subject for me. They were planning to use you for their next experiment. The implication hit both of them at the same time. Jack wasn't just an innocent bystander who had gotten caught up in Luna's escape. He had been selected as a future victim of Meridian's research. What kind of experiment? Jack asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Dr. Harrison pulled out another file. Enhanced creative intuition. They believed that people with natural psychic sensitivity could be modified to have precognitive abilities, the ability to see possible futures. They wanted to create individuals who could predict market trends, political outcomes, even natural disasters. Jack felt sick. They were going to turn me into some kind of fortune teller? More than that, Luna said, reading through the technical specifications. They wanted to create someone who could influence future events by understanding all the possible outcomes. A person who could manipulate reality itself. The scope of what Meridian was attempting was staggering. They weren't just trying to create enhanced individuals. They were trying to create people who could control the future itself. As evening approached, they heard vehicles pulling up outside Dr. Harrison's house. Through the window, they could see black SUVs surrounding the property. They found us, Dr. Harrison said quietly. I'm sorry. I think one of my neighbors must have reported seeing strangers. Luna closed her eyes and reached out with her enhanced senses. There are 12 of them. They're not planning to capture us, they're planning to eliminate us. Jack looked around the hidden room desperately. Is there another way out? Dr. Harrison shook his head. The tunnel I was building isn't finished yet. Through the walls they could hear voices giving orders, the sound of equipment being set up, the click of weapons being prepared. Meridian had decided that Luna and Jack knew too much to be allowed to live. There is one option, Luna said quietly. But it's dangerous for all of us. What? Both men asked at once. I make contact with Dr. Mitchell telepathically. My abilities have grown strong enough that I might be able to reach her mind directly. I could try to negotiate the evidence in exchange for Dr. Harrison's daughter and our freedom. That's too risky, Jack protested. She'll try to take control of your mind. Luna took his hands in hers. Maybe. But it's the only chance we have. And Jack, if this goes wrong, if something happens to me, you have to promise me you'll find a way to get this evidence to the authorities. Before Jack could protest further, Luna sat down and closed her eyes. Her breathing became deep and steady, and suddenly the air in the room felt charged with strange energy. Outside, the voices of the men surrounding the house grew confused and agitated. Something was happening that they hadn't expected. Luna's eyes snapped open, and when she looked at Jack and Dr. Harrison, her expression had changed completely. "It's time," she said in a voice that sounded both like her own and like someone else entirely. "The final game is about to begin." The mental connection Luna made with Dr. Mitchell lasted only 30 seconds, but in that brief moment, everything changed. When Luna opened her eyes, tears were streaming down her face. "She agreed to meet," Luna whispered. "But it's a trap. She has no intention of letting any of us live." Jack knelt beside her chair. "What did you see?" "Dr. Harrison's daughter is alive, but she's being held at the main Meridian facility. Dr. Mitchell plans to use her as bait to lure us there." Luna wiped her eyes. "But I also saw something else. The experiment they performed on me. It didn't just enhance my abilities, it's killing me." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "The neural pathways they created in my brain are unstable. Every time I use my enhanced abilities, they degrade a little more. Dr. Mitchell estimates I have maybe 2 weeks before the damage becomes irreversible." Dr. Harrison sank into a chair, his face pale. "That's why they're not in a hurry to capture you. They're waiting for you to burn out naturally." Luna nodded. "But there's something they don't know. The connection between Jack and me has been stabilizing the neural pathways. Being near him has been keeping me alive longer than they expected." Jack took her hands. "Then we stay together. We find another way." "There is no other way," Luna said gently. "But I have a plan. It's dangerous and it requires all of us to make sacrifices, but it might work." Outside, they could hear the sound of tactical teams setting up positions around the house. Meridian was preparing for a siege, confident that they had their targets trapped. Luna stood and walked to the window. "Dr. Mitchell thinks she understands my abilities, but she doesn't realize how much they've evolved. The psychic connection I have with Jack has created something new, something she's never seen before." "What are you talking about?" Dr. Harrison asked. Luna turned back to them and her eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "Jack and I have become something like a shared consciousness. We can access each other's memories, feel each other's emotions, even share our thought processes. But more than that, we can combine our psychic abilities." Jack felt a strange sensation, as if his mind was expanding beyond the boundaries of his skull. Suddenly, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of everyone in the surrounding area. The tactical team members outside, Dr. Harrison's fear and hope, even distant civilians in the town below. "This is impossible," Jack breathed. "Nothing is impossible anymore," Luna replied. "But using this level of ability will accelerate the neural degradation. We might have hours instead of weeks." Dr. Harrison looked between them. "What's your plan?" Luna walked to the computer terminal in the hidden room. "We're going to do something Dr. Mitchell never expected. We're going to upload our consciousness, our memories, and all the evidence about Meridian directly into the internet." Jack stared at her. "Can we do that?" "I think so. My enhanced abilities include a kind of technopathic connection. I can interface directly with electronic systems. If we combine your creative intuition with my technical abilities, we might be able to create a digital version of ourselves that can survive even if our physical bodies don't." The plan was audacious and terrifying. They would essentially have to die to accomplish it, transferring their consciousness into the digital realm while their bodies shut down from the neural overload. "What about Dr. Harrison's daughter?" Jack asked. Luna's expression grew fierce. "That's the beautiful part of the plan. Once we're in the digital realm, we'll have access to every computer system Meridian uses. We can find her, release her, and expose everything they've done simultaneously." Dr. Harrison looked at the young woman who had risked everything to expose the truth. "Elena, you're talking about sacrificing your life." "We're all going to die if we don't try," Luna replied. "This way, at least we have a chance to make it count." The sound of breaking glass came from the front of the house. The tactical team was beginning their assault. "We have to do this now," Luna said, sitting down at the computer terminal. Jack hesitated. The plan meant giving up everything. His physical existence, his quiet life in the cabin, even the possibility of a normal future with Luna. But as he looked at her determined face, he realized that none of those things mattered if they couldn't stop Meridian from hurting more innocent people. "Let's do it," he said, placing his hand on Luna's shoulder. The moment Jack touched her, their combined psychic abilities created a surge of energy that made every electronic device in the house flicker. Luna's fingers moved across the keyboard with impossible speed, writing code that seemed to flow directly from her enhanced mind. "I can see the pathways," she said, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality. "The internet isn't just a network of computers. It's like a digital nervous system. We can exist there, at least for a while." Jack felt his consciousness beginning to merge with Luna's as she worked. Through their shared awareness, he could perceive the vast digital landscape of the internet. Billions of connected minds, endless flows of information, and hidden databases containing secrets that powerful people wanted to keep buried. The tactical team had reached the main floor of the house. They would find the hidden room within minutes. "Almost ready," Luna gasped. The neural strain was enormous, and Jack could feel her pain as if it were his own. "Jack, I need you to focus all your creative intuition on imagining what we'll be like in digital form. Make us real in that space." Jack closed his eyes and concentrated harder than he ever had before. He imagined their consciousness as streams of living data, their memories as crystalline structures that could survive in the electronic realm, their love for each other as an unbreakable connection that transcended physical form. The door to the hidden room exploded inward just as Luna pressed the final key sequence. Tactical team members rushed in, but they were too late. On every screen in the room, lines of code were flowing like rivers of light, carrying Jack and Luna's digitized consciousness into the vast network of the internet. Their bodies collapsed simultaneously, but their minds were already gone, racing through fiber optic cables and satellite links at the speed of light. Dr. Harrison watched in amazement as every screen in Meridian facilities around the world suddenly displayed the same message. The truth will be revealed. Justice will be served. No one is beyond accountability. Within hours, classified documents began appearing on news websites, social media platforms, and government databases. The evidence that Dr. Harrison had collected, combined with Jack and Luna's digital abilities, created an unstoppable flood of information about Meridian's illegal activities. Dr. Mitchell tried desperately to shut down the leaks, but Jack and Luna's digital consciousness had spread throughout the network. Every time Meridian blocked one pathway, 10 more opened up. They had become part of the internet itself, invisible but omnipresent. 3 days later, Dr. Harrison received a phone call from his daughter. She had been found safe and unharmed in an abandoned Meridian facility, along with dozens of other victims who had been rescued by anonymous tips that led authorities directly to their locations. The Meridian Research Institute was shut down permanently. Dr. Mitchell and her associates were arrested and faced life sentences for crimes against humanity. The enhanced individuals who had been created through illegal experiments were offered proper medical care and counseling to help them cope with their altered abilities. But the most remarkable part of the story was what happened next. 6 months after their digital transformation, people around the world began reporting strange experiences. Writers found themselves creating stories with impossible accuracy about future events. Artists painted scenes that later came true. Scientists made breakthrough discoveries through sudden flashes of insight that seemed to come from outside their own minds. Dr. Harrison, working with a new team of ethical researchers, concluded that Jack and Luna hadn't just uploaded their consciousness to the internet. They had somehow distributed their enhanced abilities across the entire network. Anyone who spent significant time online was being subtly influenced by their psychic presence, gaining small amounts of creative intuition and empathic sensitivity. The world was changing in ways both visible and invisible. People were becoming more understanding of each other, more creative in solving problems, more intuitive about the consequences of their actions. Late at night, when Dr. Harrison sat alone in his study, he sometimes felt their presence more strongly, not as ghosts or spirits, but as a warm, loving consciousness that watched over the digital world they had helped create. On quiet evenings, when the internet hummed with the activities of billions of connected minds, careful observers might notice patterns in the data flow that seemed almost like whispers, reminders to be kind to strangers, inspiration for artists and writers, gentle nudges toward making the world a better place. Jack and Luna had found a way to exist beyond death, beyond physical form, beyond the limitations that had once contained them. They had become part of something larger, a digital guardian spirit for humanity's growing technological consciousness. And sometimes, in the early hours of the morning when the network traffic was light, their love story continued in streams of data that painted aurora-like patterns across computer screens around the world. A reminder that even in the